Hi, everybody. My name is Barry Heidowitz. I'm the Director of Education Labs at here at XtremeLabs, and today we have Sasha and Kranjac. Is that how you say your last name? Am I pronouncing it correctly? Great. And Sasha is presenting this latest on our MCT series about well, today it's about the science of communication, turning everyday conversations into impactful dialogue. And what I'll do is I'll post the link for the MCT site where the recording will be available. And also, if you have questions, you can post them in the chat at any time, and we'll try and get those to the instructor. And with that, I'll hand it over to Sasha, and he'll take it from there. Thanks, Sasha.
Thank you, Barry. Hi, everyone. Welcome, and I'm glad that you're here. Today session is about science of communication. It's about communication because communication is important to us trainers. And for trainers, the communication is a little bit more, slightly more important than to others, but we can't escape from the communication. We cannot isolate ourselves. We are social beings, and through communication, actually, we achieve what we actually achieve a lot. So we go through our lives communicating all the times from the time when we were born until the very end. And especially for the trainers, we need to know how communication works in order to be a little bit more successful communicators and listeners as well. But this is something that we will hear a little bit more about in this session. Welcome to the Science of Communication. My name is Sasha. I have a couple of companies through which we deliver trainings. We deliver architecture and consulting. We are also partners, so we don't just do Azure, but also AWS, GCP as well, CompTIA, etc. I'm also actually regional director and security MVP and Azure MVP. Have a lot of certifications, and that in my work also we use XtremeLabs as well. So make sure that you take a look at the XtremeLabs offerings as well. Anyway, this is the rough agenda today. Well, actually, this is the exact agenda today, but we will say a little bit more in between these tabs or bullets. What is communication? What is the purpose of communication? And we'll take a look at the communication process and how to communicate better and be more successful as a successful communicator or listener. Anyway, what is communication? What do you think? What is communication? Anyway, try to answer this question. What is communication? What communication consists of and what it is? Is communication a dialogue, in fact, between two people? Is the communication when two people talk? Is this communication? Or can communication be also, for example, this one? So we have one person talking and others listening. We have, if we translate this to our networks, so multicast or broadcast, for example, communication is also a communication. It's one-way communication. It's not two-way, of course, because you don't have feedback. For example, if you listen to the radio or watch television, this is communication as well, right? Because you are watching TV, someone is communicating something to you as a listener, but whatever you do, you can't your feedback doesn't get to the communicator, to the person who you're listening to, because of course the person is behind the radio or is behind a TV screen. Anyway, but there's a misconception or misunderstanding. Is communication also does necessarily the communication does communication necessarily have to be a conversation or a spoken word? Is this communication, for example, sign language between the people who can't talk? Can this be treated treated as communication as well? What do you think? I'm sure you'll agree that this is communication as well. Although there are no words, and communication can be also in complete silence. So we use something else to communicate. In this case, words, for example. But is the communication actually something that is also just specific to human beings, to people? Of course, it's not. So we have a communication between animals, and animals don't have words. They have, well, if we talk about birds, they sing, or cats meow, or dogs bark. But also they communicate via facial expressions, right? If you have dogs, I have one, and you exactly, or cats or birds, you'll exactly know based on their behavior. If you have a dog, then you have a facial expression of a dog or a cat. You'll know when your dog is sad or happy or hungry or thirsty or scared. But if you have a bird or a parrot or, I don't know, something else, then or iguana, whatever, you will probably over time figure out the patterns in behavior, and that behavior, the movements also communicate something. Whether it's a color, for example, I know if you have a chameleon, then the color, or a fish, or a I don't know, let's say if it's an octopus, then the color of the skin also can communicate. It can be used to communicate. For example, the octopus also, or squids, can communicate whether they are black or white. They communicate fear or anger, and so on. Besides the fact that their skin is also used for camouflage, for example, for hiding from the enemies and predators. So the communication can involve a lot of things. Facial expressions, we've seen the nonverbal and verbal behavioral things as well. But what is communication, in fact? What do you think? Can we treat the communication as exchange of information? Exchange meaning this implies two persons or two subjects. The one that is sending some information and the one that is receiving. But also, for example, if you recall, we just mentioned television or radio. This forms of communicating can also be classified as communication, right? Because it doesn't matter if you can or cannot give some feedback to the communicator, to the one who is speaking or delivering some information, then this can be treated as communication as well. Could communication actually be something else? What it is? So let's take a look at a definition. For example, we'll focus on communication between us, between people, in specifically, couples, pairs, friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, and MCTs and trainers and attendees. For example, communication is perhaps, because there are a lot of important things, but perhaps it might be the most important and difficult activity a person can engage in. Well, why difficult? Because communicating is difficult. You'll see why, and their wars can be started because of miscommunicating or misunderstanding the person that you are talking to, or maybe separation or divorce, or fights or wars or whatever. So misunderstanding, disagreements, and everything. So communicating is difficult, and the main thing in this sentence is actually an activity. So communication is an activity. It means what activity word actually means. It hides the word active. So the communication is an active process. It's a process that is not passive. It's active process. Even if you just listen, the communication is an active process. Even when I talk now, you are communicating with me as well. So, for example, you've done your online trainings, right? And especially during COVID, you as a trainer, you don't have to answer, but just reflect. How can you, is it the same thing? Do you feel the same when your entire class is muted and when entire class has their web cameras off, or when the entire class doesn't speak at all, but have their cameras on? So this is also something. This also something can tell, and the class is communicating something to the person that is speaking as well. So communication actually is an activity a person can engage in. It is a delicate, in fact, it is a very delicate membrane through which people can share thoughts, ideas, feelings, dreams, disappointments, intentions, everything. So we communicate with someone to uh, these things that are here in this sentence, like thoughts, ideas, feelings, dreams, and disappointments. You can communicate these even not intentionally. So even if you speak about Azure or M365 or about Dynamics and Power Platform, you can communicate something beyond that, and you can communicate your feelings as well. You can communicate your thoughts and how the class can feel what you feel as well, because the way how you talk and the facial expressions also give away how you feel as well, and what you think about the class, what you think about the course, how you're feeling, and so on. So your state of mind also is reflected through words as well. So anyway, communication is a key component in interaction process. The key component, because it's very, very important. But what communication can be? Is communication this, for example? That's communication actually. Uh, do we need the spoken word? Do we need facial expression? Do we need some media? Media? Do we need electronic media? Do we need radio, television? Do we need? Can communication be this? Paper. So, for example, letters. We are now neglecting paper letters or snail mail, but the communication can be this as well. For example, as simple as giving away your file to someone else, or written note, or book, or as a gift, or in the company when you exchange your ideas or memos, or when you send a letter, when you send a card to someone. This is much more effective communication than sending an email. Imagine sending a birthday card and saying happy birthday to someone, or sending an email. How this communication will be perceived? What will be the best? What will, out of the two, if you pick a birthday present, birthday card, actually written note, manual written, handwritten note, or an email, what will be perceived better? And there are certainly differences in between these two types of communication, right? So this can be treated as communication as well. No spoken words, no sound is at all, but there are different media that we communicate through, whether it's waves or paper or whatever it is. Anyway, let's take a look a little bit forward. What is a communication? So the word communication comes from the Latin word communicare, which is a verb meaning to make common, or actually that is to make it known. So that's the communication, or comunicare, which also now you have an Italian word. Comunicare means to communicate. So that's the Latin word, to make it known, to make it common. So you're communicating to give someone an information about you, about something you want. So now that we have seen a little bit about communication, what do you think? What is the purpose of communication? What do you think? So let's reflect a little bit on that. So what would be the purpose of communication? To well, as the word implies, it's it's the It's to make something known, of course, because you speak to let someone know your thoughts, your feelings, your what's on your mind. Let's say, and there are a lot of communication is a wide term, but for us, what is most important is interpersonal communication. So the communication that is an action, an engagement between persons. So interpersonal communication. So what it is, interpersonal communication actually tries to explain what is the meaning of communication. What is the meaning of communication? As the word implies, communicare means to let someone know something. The meaning of communication also it's derived from the wishes that a person wants to achieve with communication. So when you communicate, what do you want to achieve with communication? So what it is that is your goal, and why is communication important? So very crucial questions. So communication, actually, as we mentioned previously, communication is the sharing of thoughts, feelings, attitudes, ideas, exchanging verbal and non-verbal symbols. And we'll dive a little bit into details. What does that mean? So verbal and non-verbal symbols. And what are the symbols? Are we talking about the words, actually? Yes, but not just about words, because we can, as we've seen previously on previous slides, the communication is not just words. This communication can be sounds. The communication doesn't have to be a word at all or sound at all. The communication can be a look or a gesture, a movement, or written symbol, that is a word or an essay or a file or email, for example. That is the sharing. And this is very, very important. So the exchanging verbal and non-verbal symbols, this is also very, very important. So let's see what interpersonal actually communication is. So this is the process of sharing a private or personal or professional. Well, actually, it's private. The private is because it belongs to us. Thoughts and feelings with others through a different meaning, through different media, through different forms of communication. So why the communication is important? Because when we know why communication is important and what the communication actually consists of, there are a lot of parts in the communication process. We'll explain afterwards a little bit. And then I hope you will get a bigger understanding of what actually communication is, how complex it is, and how important it is to be an effective communicator. And actually, I hope that you will also get a bigger picture or understanding why the misunderstanding happen and who is guilty, actually, the one who is speaking or the one who is listening, or maybe both. So communication is very, very important because, after all, you've got your degrees, your jobs, your friends, your spouses, you communicate with your surroundings, with your friends, with people that surround your life. So communication is important because you're communicating since you were born. So communication is important, and unfortunately, a lot too little is devoted to communicating. So I wish we had a communication classes since early ages in elementary school and in high school and in college, because communication is very important. Why communication is important? Because first of all, you have to. Well, we enjoy interacting with other people because it evokes positive changes in emotional life, of course. The communication interaction can heal us, of course. The communication is important because we then form and express our identity through social interaction. So we are social beings, as every other being is social, whether these are lions or ants or birds or whatever. All the species actually once in a while have to be together. So even if it's just, for example, during during mating season, for example, even if it's just one day out of the 364, then the lions or lionesses also have to communicate, and through their communication, they also find a suitable partner for mating. So that's also very important. So expressing identity through communication, through social interaction between different people. Because of the educational reasons, of course, we are trainers. We teach other people. We have been in high school. We have been in elementary school. Some people have gone through college. It's prerequisite for learning and communicating effectively. So if you don't communicate effectively, of course, you will have well, maybe slightly better, worse or better grades, of course, because of your form of expression. More skill in communication, more satisfied with lives and close personal relationship. Of course, that is through your social interactions, through I don't know, maybe with friends, with spouses, with in school, and so on. And then it's important for achieving professional goals in several professions, of course, and in well, in all professions. Well, anyway, there are some prejudices or unfounded beliefs about communications or misunderstandings about that. And that is the first one, that the communication is actually something that everyone knows. So everyone knows about the communication, but not everyone knows how to communicate. And that's a very important thing. So everyone has, most of the people have heard about the communication. And when you say communication, then probably that is not the first occurrence of that word to a person that you are talking right now. But this is something that not everyone knows. And that means in the full aspect of people don't know how to communicate, and that's why misunderstanding happens. Communication uses words; they don't have to use words. So if I say, if I make a grin face, if I make such a odd face, and tell you, oh, this blouse or skirt or T-shirt looks great on you, but also I actually frown. So probably this is not the effective communication, or I'm not communicating what I'm actually telling you with my words. So my words and my facial expression are not are not synchronized, right? So you have to know how to communicate. Communication doesn't have to use words. I don't have to say anything to communicate. In fact, communication can be avoided. You can't avoid communication even if you're silent. Even if you the lack of communication is communicating something to someone. So if you don't want to speak to someone, or if you make facial expressions that are not the facial expressions that when you look at I don't know, a movie, or when you listen to a radio drama, or whatever, even if you are alone with your friend, or with someone, then communication cannot be avoided, because we've actually said previously, communication doesn't have to use words at all. And communication is a conscious and intended activity, so it is not conscious. We can influence, we have influence on the communication, but in most part it is not conscious and it's not intended, because you can communicate even if you're not concentrated on that. So you can make facial expressions and communicate something without even saying anything. And it's possible to fully control your communication. Fully 100% no, because you can be trained, of course. We can train on how to communicate and how to fool the people that we are communicating with. So we can tell lies. We can say one thing, we can utter words in one way, and then we can make our facial expressions compatible with these faces or gestures. But we have to be very skilled in that process. And even then, there are some nuances that we cannot avoid. And one prejudice or unfounded belief is, and one actually the wrong thing is the more extensive communication better relationship, and then you will agree. So it's not that if you talk too much and if you talk always and if you talk in all occasions, that doesn't mean that we will have better relationships. And that mean every kind of relationship, professional, personal, private, and emotional, and whatever relationship is. That doesn't mean that we will be better in problem solving. So that's one misconception or unfounded belief about communication. Sometimes less is more. And to focus on interpersonal communication, there are some characteristics. Interpersonal communication characterizes a couple of things. So it is the face-to-face communication. We're talking about a very specific area of communication, and that is the interpersonal communication between people. And to some extent, we can also apply this to some animals. But let's focus on us humans. So interpersonal communication between humans characterizes face-to-face communications. So between with no intermediaries. So that's the first thing. The second is that it happens between pairs or small groups. So we're talking about interpersonal communication, not about television or radio, or when a singer sings to a stadium of full of 50,000 or 100,000 listeners. Anyway, we're talking about interpersonal. It happens between pairs or small groups. So, and then the interpersonal communication is actually through the form and content of communication, the personal and social qualities of the communicator are conveyed, of course. So this is, of course, the more we are skilled in communicating, the more effective communication will be. And when I mean skilled, that includes a lot of things, not just facial expressions, but also words and vice versa. And the interpersonal communication start actually with yourself. So all perception of communication is in fact an observation and understanding is based on the senses of insights that are associated with a person, of course. And also all communication and interactions within within that communication are limited by what the person is and what they have experienced in life, of course. So we don't have the same views on political views, this religious views, and views about work, views about marriage, views about friendship, views about everything, about I don't know, NASCAR, motor, football, soccer, whatever, rugby, I don't know, basketball. So we don't have we don't share this. Not every person has the same same values or same view, and this is influenced on what we have experienced in life. And the language that someone uses, the views they express, the ideas they represent, all of this reflect their specific background and experience. So for example, when we talk about communication, can then interpersonal communication be this? So we talked about interpersonal communication, so between persons. So how many forms of persons the interpersonal communication involves? How many of them? Two? So is this just me and you, or two persons, A and B? How many of them? Four? Actually, it is six. So communication between two people involves six persons and six perspectives. And this is the first thing that is crucial to understand interpersonal communication. I have one very nice slide that explains all the details and all the factors, all the attributes in the interpersonal communication. So communication between people, between two persons, between two people, between two persons involves six persons and six perspectives. What are these? We'll see what it is. So first person is it's how a person sees him or herself. Reflect a little bit on that. So if you think you're the smartest in this world, or if you're not the smartest in the room, this will greatly influence on how you communicate with others. Then what influences the communication between two people is how a person sees another person. If you think a person is dumb, or if the person is not intelligent, or if the person is highly intelligent, if you don't have a high view on that person that you're communicating with, if you dislike that person, if you like that person, if you have a high esteem for that person, all this will it will influence on how you communicate with others. Then there's a third thing. There's a third person, and that is how a person believes the other person sees him, because you don't know when, for example, if you talk to someone, you don't know what that person actually means, thinks about you. You have a vision or perception, what that person thinks about you, but you don't know for sure. That is why we communicate, in order to find that. And then is the vice versa. So it is influenced on how the second person actually sees him or herself as well, because the person can be very restrained in communicating, because it might be intimidated by your intellect, or by your academic achievements, or whatever, or by a number of certificates that you have, for example. It is also influenced on how second person sees the first person, the person that is communicating, because of course it might see you as a very rude, or ignorant, or maybe very I don't know, modest, or pleasant person. And then it's how second person believes the first person sees him and her. And that actually brings us to this. It's where a well-known picture from interwebs. Life of a student is what my friends think I do, what my mom thinks I do, what society thinks I do, what other people think I do, what I think I do, and then what I actually do. So, and that's boiled to this actually slide, to this picture, roughly, but it is partial. It is. That brings us to this. So people create both themselves and others through the relationships they have. So it's very important, this they have the relationships they want to have, because you're influenced on what you want to have. You're inclined to communicate, to do what you want to have. For example, you want to be accepted in a certain company, or in an academic institution, or in some circles of your peers, for example, trainers, about people who are knowledgeable or esteemed, and the relationship they believe they have. So if you think that your life or relationship is not a quality one, or if it's a quality one, your relationships won't be the same. That brings us to something else. It brings us to the fact that all existing perspectives actually should always be kept in mind, and other ways of observing the same interaction should be considered. And that is also very important. So let's reiterate once again. So all existing perspectives should always be kept in mind. What existing perspectives? These that we've mentioned previously, and these are 6 persons that we mentioned. So these are all existing perspectives, and all these should always be kept in mind, and other ways of observing the same interaction should be considered as well. So the skillful interpersonal communication requires meta perception. What is meta perception, and what are the components of the communication process? We will see that. The more accurate the perception of oneself, and the insight in how others perceive us. So let's dissect the communication process, which is the ultimate, which the how the this is how actually communication process functions, and these are the components. So we have a person that it's the talker that wants to talk. Actually, we have a sender of a message. We have a person A and we have a person B. Let's see now the person A, the person A and B. If we have 2 persons and we communicate, we have interpersonal communication. Let's say there are 2 persons. Sender and receiver exchange their positions as a sender, as a receiver in the communication as we talk. Why? And you know it. So now I'm talking, and in the conversation, you are talking, I'm listening, you talking, and so on. So at one point of time, 1 second, I'm a sender, you're a receiver, and in a couple of seconds after that, you are the sender, I'm a receiver. So let's dissect this process. So we have a sender a message. We have sender that is sending a message, whatever the message is, and message actually can be anything. Can be some verbal, can be non-verbal. But let's say we have a message that we want to send. We have our thoughts and ideas. So how the receiver of the message, what do you want in communication? You want your thoughts and ideas to be received by receiver. You want to transfer these thoughts and ideas to the receiver. In what form? Unchanged form, right? So you want exactly to communicate what you think. So exactly your thoughts, what you think, you want to be communicated without any modification, right? So you don't want that person to get a wrong message. Okay, so your thoughts, your ideas can be sent through a channel. The channel can be voice or facial expression, can be hand, can be email, whatever it is. There's a channel through which we deliver our messages. Um, uh, what else? What else do we have? We have actually also the other thing, and that is coding into symbols. So our thoughts needs to be coded into symbols in order to a channel can be in order a channel to accept these thoughts and ideas and to be transmitted. So it's similar like the information in the computer. So we need to transfer it into the electrical signals that will go through wire or through the electromagnetic waves that will be sent through the Wi-Fi. So that's the coding into symbols. The symbols can be the words that we will speak, or the symbols can be in fact things that we type, a message, an email, or facial expression, and so on. Then we have a noise, and then we have an interference. And the noise and interference can be anything. That can be the facial expression of the receiver. It can be our misconception or misunderstanding of what the receiver actually does. Noise interference can be also our what can influence our coding into symbols, or actually what we talk about. Can be also whether we perceive that receiver to be interested and non-interested, for example, and so on. There are a lot of noise and a lot of interference. Facial expression of the receiver, for example, if the receiver is constantly looking at a phone and not listening to us and looking at us into the eye, or just looking elsewhere, then noise interference can be also something that will adjust and change coding into symbols. So you see right now that coding into symbols is changed as soon as the noise interference have had their influence on it, and immediately when it's changed, it's not the same as the thoughts and ideas that we wanted to communicate with the receiver in the first place. So that's not the message that's not the thought, that's not the idea that we have in our heads. And then the receiver gets the wrong message, then the receiver gets the wrong thought and wrong idea. Then the receiver is decoding message. So if I say, this is really good, and or no, I don't want to do that, because in some cultures, nodding means yes, but if I say no, or if I say yes, the receiver is decoding message differently than I'm communicating. So that message that has been that is decoded also is influenced by noise and interference, and that will be also my color and intonation, how I speak. Maybe I speak very loud, or maybe I speak very rude, or maybe I speak, I don't know, very intimidating, or this is also noise interference. If I have a soft voice, if I have a soft look, if I have a facial expression that I'm really interested in communicating with that person and not typing on a phone, then the noise interference in decoding messages is the same. So you, for example, you got an email and then you thought, oh, what a rude email. So this person is very rude. How the hell this person, what the hell this person thinks he is or she is? How's he? What is this communication? But it might not be the type of the communication that the sender actually initially had. That might not be the thought or idea. That might be some noise or interference that influenced the coding into that email or communicating with you. And then we have the message that has been interpreted, that is that the receiver is interpreting, and you'll see also all the places where this can be where this can go wrong. It can go wrong right here. It can go wrong right there. It can go wrong in the message, in the channel, in the decoding, sorry, in the noise interference, and all this influences how the receiver actually interprets the message. And this message that you had initially, your thoughts, your ideas, have been changed while being transmitted by a noise interference, by different decoding of the messages. That's where the misunderstanding happens. So we are, as the sender and as the receiver, we are responsible, in fact, for the whole communication process. And communication is an active process. It's not an easy process. It's very difficult because, as I mentioned, wars can be started because of the bad communications. The people can get fired or not be employed, or I don't know, some maybe divorced or whatever. The interpersonal communications is very, very important. So, and there's feedback. There is also feedback. So if I'm saying something to you and you're looking very disappointed or very as you didn't understand me, for example, if I'm a teacher and explaining math or Azure, how the or ADDS functions, I know maybe some tokens and so on, so that the student might not be you will immediately know that the student actually got your message, understands the matter, or doesn't understand the matter. So in that case, for example, maybe we are the ones as the senders that need to change how we communicate, or change a little bit of coding, or minimize the noise interference and so on, or actually focus on the feedback, for example, and so on. So all of these things influence how we communicate. And there are a lot of obstacles, differences in perception, and hurrying up with conclusions, not thinking, the stereotypes, and lack of knowledge, and lack of interest, difficulties in self-expression as well, different emotions, personality, environment, you're tired, not tired, you're happy, not happy, obstructions, interruptions, unconfirmed assumptions, of course, experience. All of these are communication obstacles that change our messages, and therefore we are in fact frustrated because the receiver didn't get our message as we intended. But fortunately, there's a science behind that. I'm not making these things up. This is from the science book that I had in my college. I will actually mention that book to you as well, because it's a very old and very nice book. How to communicate better and be more successful as a trainer, speaker, listener, colleague, spouse, father, whatever. There are some fundamental skills. All existing perspectives actually should be always kept in mind, and other ways of observing the same interaction should be considered. This is something that we already communicated previously. And the fundamental skill is the ability to transfer your own ideas, your own feelings to others, so the others can in fact understand the right and the exact way what you mean. So the initial thought you had, the initial idea you had, you have to be sure that the person you're communicating with, or person, actually understand him in the right or exact way. So you need to minimize the obstacles, the noise, interference. Maybe you have to code your message or thought. You have to code it differently. That means talk differently, use different words, explain it a little bit more, dumb it down, for example, and so on. And the other person is also responsible, because the other person has to ask questions. The other person has to also be a very good listener as well. So the skills of listening and observing others also and understanding their messages is also very important. So Epictetus, as Greek philosopher, said, nature gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak, and that is true. So there are types of non-listening. We have 2 pages of these very important types. Not many of them, a couple of them. Why 2 pages? Because there are some sentences that need to fit on the slide. There is pseudo listening. So the listener actually shows reactions as if focused on speech, but still does not listen. So that is also one important thing. So if you're listening, don't be pseudo listener. So listen, in fact. One layer listening, receiving only one part of a message verbal while neglecting the other nonverbal. This is also very important. Then we have selective listening. I agree that you'll agree that you've heard about that as well. Listening only to what the person is particularly interested in, skipping everything else. So that doesn't mean that we just speak about the technical stuff, but we speak also about about things in our personal life, for example, with our spouses or friends, for example. And listening is a skill. It's a very hard, because listening is an active process. Actually, even if you don't speak, listening is an active process, and very hard to do, by the way. Selective rejection, it's focusing only on topics you don't want to hear, actually. And when such a topic comes up in a conversation, the listening simply suppresses it and dismisses it and said, well, that's non-existing, and so on. And then there's other thing, 2 more things, actually, 3. Grasping the word, the listen only so much as to see the opportunity and then jump into the conversation, because I'm the one who needs to speak and have the word. And if you just maybe do an experiment, for example, I will just go step back. Do an experiment. Watch 2-person conversation. You will see that maybe you even have been in such a conversation, in such situation, when one person speaks all the time and the other person doesn't say a word. In 1 hour, one person speaks 58 minutes and the other speaks 2, and then the person who spoke for 58 minutes said, oh, this was a good conversation. Yes, because everyone likes to talk and no one likes to listen. So listening is a very hard process, and it's a very hard thing to do. Defensive listening. The most innocent statements are perceived as an attack, triggering a defensive response. That doesn't mean so. I've just had a couple of weeks ago a very good conversation, a very long conversation with a couple of friends. There was great conversation I had in last months and years, because everyone was listening, no one was interrupting, and we had an intelligent conversation, and it was really good. And all of us actually felt good after that conversation that took hours and hours, because it wasn't defensive listening. And even if we had a different perspective, different thoughts, different meanings, different views on a subject, that doesn't mean that we couldn't communicate or exchange ideas. And that's the crucial in communicating. Ambush hearing, listening to attack an interlocutor. You don't have to do that. So you've seen also these things happening. So active listening, actually, it's an important element of the communication process. It's very hard. It's extremely hard, and for some people, much harder than anything else. So some people are very, very hard listener, or actually, this doesn't exist with some people, and that's when the miscommunication it happens, and that when communication doesn't happen at all because you don't want to talk to that person who's actually jeopardizing all the conversation. So there are 7 different types of listening, but there is only one way to listen properly. It requires active listening, and as such requires more energy than speaking, and in fact it is, and this is backed up by science. How to know we're not listening? We compare others to ourselves. We have a previously negative attitude, for example, towards other people, incompetent, indecisive, and other things as well. So prejudices, for example, we're focused on giving advice because we think that we are the smartest in the room, and so on. We are calming the interlocutor. There's some people just talk like that. For example, some people are very loud, and you can, for example, if there are different cultures, if you go a little bit north up in Europe, well, where people tend to be a little bit quieter in communication, in comparison to the persons that are a little bit southern, when the people are waving with their hands and communicating and gesturing and speaking loudly. And it doesn't mean that these persons are arguing with you, but this is just the way that they speak. So we don't have to calm the interlocutor. We don't have to, in fact, think of your colleague or friend or the person we're talking to that is in fact very aggressive. We always agree with a particular interlocutor, and that doesn't mean we're listening, because it is just dismissing what they're saying. Yes, 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 of course, and just waiting for the conversation to end. When we think about what to answer, it's very hard to do so because we're not concentrating on listening. Actually, we do not listen when we think really hard what to answer, and when it shows when the process of communication is not going very, very smoothly. And we search for hidden meaning. It doesn't mean a hidden meaning. So there is, and most often there's no hidden meaning, and you will spot it if the person is toxic. You will spot it through different ways than just through that particular case of communicating. And finally, to wrap it up with a couple of slides more, we're just about to wrap up this. And finally, how to be a good listener. Well, we have some advice. Be prepared to listen. It's very hard to listen. It takes quite the energy to do that. Listening is not a passive skill, actually. It's an activity requiring mental attitude. It's very hard to do that. But it's rewarding. Be truly interested, and don't be afraid to show it. And oh yes, it is. Most people, well, people tend to be egoistic and self-centered. So be interested in your interlocutor, to the person you are speaking with. Otherwise, you don't have to speak. Just turn around and speak to someone else. If you're not interesting, don't waste other people time. But if you want to talk, if you want to have a conversation, then do it properly. Be open-minded. Do not jump to conclusions. And that means wait for additional sentences to be uttered and spoken, because maybe the other person doesn't have such a good ability into expressing themselves, for example, like you, or like you would want to. Some might need 2 sentences. Some people can actually need 10 or 15 to communicate. Look at a bigger picture. Now look for a main point. Some people are actually speaking, jumping, and skipping content. It doesn't mean that they're just a little bit lacking words, or jumping, thinking too fast. For example, they think faster than they can speak. Let's say, and listen critically, review the assumptions and arguments but actually be impartial. And of course, it depends, of course, to whom you're talking to. But that means that the person also needs to be interested in communicating with you in the first place. So not that doesn't mean that if you don't agree with the person that you're speaking with, that that you're the person's enemy. It's just an exchange of thoughts and exchange of words and thoughts, of course. And two more points, actually. One, beware of any distracting circumstances, for example. So the attention is can be selective. The attention is fluctuating. Of course, mobile phones are main distractors. I hate these when people talk. So there's some you can also look in on YouTube for Simon Sinek. He has a very good thought on that. So keep your phone down. Actually, put it on mute and put it in a bag. And especially when you have dinner, when you have talk, when you have a conversation, you don't need your phone here. You don't need to answer every mail and at the same side. Email is not a synchronous way of communications. Email is asynchronous. What it means you don't have to look at the email as soon as you got one. You don't have to answer the one as soon as you got one. Just leave it there and answer the email after a couple hours. If the house is burning down, it's too late. Someone else could have called the fire department anyway. And if it's burning, you can't actually do nothing. So just keep on conversation, except if it's burning the one that you're talking in. So anyway, if you're distracted, do something to fix it. That means the phones or the noise or other people that are talking and so on. If you're distracted by personal clothing, vocabulary, presentation, try to understand why it's bothering you. If this is something external, then just get rid of this. Phones today are the biggest evil of conversation. Refrains from speaking. That's the very hard. That may be the hardest part if you want to. If you want to be a good listener, do not interrupt. Actually, even when person speaking pauses, that doesn't mean that the your person that you're speaking with is finished. So be patient. And for the ones who need to know more about it, that will be all. Thank you for being here. I just want to say the book, the main book that I've used for that. There are a lot of books that I've used, of course, but the main book that I want to emphasize, the one that has in my opinion, the best description of the interpersonal communication is actually the title Interpersonal Communication. It's by Dr. Kathleen Reardon. It's a little bit older book, but I don't think you can buy it on Amazon, the new one, but actually some used one you can buy. So Interpersonal Communication, Kathleen Reardon. It's the interpersonal communication book that I suggest if you want to study a little bit about interpersonal communication. And by being a little bit knowing how the communication works can actually make you a better person, better communicator, better partner, better spouse, better teacher, better MCT. So yes, that would be everything for today. There's a lot more, of course. There are a lot of books about that, but it's a very interesting subject. Well, at least for me, right? But since you are all trainers, I suggest that you pick it up. It's not a very thick book. It's medium-sized book, but it's a very, very good book. So very concise, very good one. I suggest that you get one. Well, anyway, I would like to get in touch with me. So these are the details. I would like to give my word to Barry and thank him for the opportunity to present this and to be here for you today. And thanks a lot, everyone. So please get in touch if you'd like so. Thanks a lot, and Barry.